I once worked as a security guard at a high-rise office building in downtown Chicago. It was late November, a cold, overcast evening when the chill in the air hinted at the upcoming holidays. One of the tenants, a local skincare clinic, was busy planning their seasonal decorations, which were stored in the building's basement alongside other supplies. That night, my routine shift in the lobby had been uneventful until I received a call from an employee at the clinic. They reported that the basement lights had inexplicably gone out and that the elevator no longer serviced that level. At first, I assumed it was a minor electrical glitch. However, I soon learned that several of the interior storage room doors had been violently forced open. The damage wasn't accidental, it bore the marks of deliberate, brute force. Realizing the situation might be more serious than it appeared, I knew I had to investigate. With the elevator out of commission, I grabbed my flashlight and reluctantly made my way down the creaky, narrow staircase into the basement. Alone in the dim corridor, I was enveloped by an eerie silence, broken only by the faint hum of old machinery. The basement itself was a labyrinth of narrow passageways lined with shelves of electrical equipment, janitorial supplies, and boxes of holiday decorations. As I moved cautiously through the maze, I noticed that many of the doors were bashed in. One door in particular looked as though it had been struck with a heavy object, leaving deep, jagged marks on its frame. I peeked into each room, finding nothing more than undisturbed supplies and scattered debris. No clear sign of theft, yet unmistakable evidence that someone had been here with a sinister purpose. Just as I began to think I'd inspected every corner, a sudden resounding slam echoed from a distant part of the basement. In an instant, all the background noises, whether the gentle clatter of a loose pipe or the soft hum of machinery, ceased, leaving an oppressive silence that made every footstep seem deafening. My heart pounded as I realized I wasn't entirely alone down there. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" My voice reverberated down the narrow corridor, only to be swallowed by the quiet. I began retracing my steps toward the staircase, intent on leaving this unsettling place. That's when I heard it, a deep, heavy breathing coming from around the final corner. My pulse surged with fear. I switched off my flashlight, carefully crept toward the source of the sound, and strained to see what lay beyond. After a few agonizing seconds, the breathing paused. Gathering every ounce of courage, I whispered a hesitant, "Hello," and flicked the flashlight back on. In that weak beam of light, I caught sight of a towering, hunched figure standing motionless against the wall. The figure held a long, dark object in one hand, something that could easily be a weapon. What truly sent a shiver down my spine was the figure's face. Impossibly pale, elongated, and almost featureless in the dim glow. Though I could not see every detail, it was unmistakably masculine. For a split second, fear froze me in place, but then survival instincts took over. I bellowed, "The police are coming! Get out of here!" before sprinting past the figure and bolting toward the stairs. My heart raced as I ascended as quickly as possible, finally locking the basement door behind me. Once safely on the lobby floor, I dialed 911 without hesitating. Within minutes, several police cruisers arrived, and at least 4 officers descended into the basement to search for any sign of the mysterious intruder. I waited nervously in the lobby, each minute stretching longer than the last. When the officers finally returned, their faces showed only confusion. They had found no trace of the hulking figure I had witnessed. Later, an electrician inspected the area and discovered that the circuit box had clearly been tampered with, which explained the blackout, yet no further evidence of a break-in was found. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the memory of that chilling night. I took several sick days, plagued by nightmares and the constant fear of encountering that colossal, shadowy presence again. Every night, as darkness fell, I'd lie awake, imagining that immense figure lurking somewhere in the corners of my room, a silent reminder of the inexplicable terror that had haunted the storage maze that cold November evening. Story number 2. I landed my very first job back in 2002 at a bustling call center located in downtown New Arcadia. Working the graveyard shift in a brand new facility was both exciting and unnerving. The office boasted an unusual, elongated, donut-shaped layout. The central hole was the main entrance and elevator lobby, while two long corridors stretched out from it. One corridor housed a fully operational production floor, with bright lights, modern workstations, manager offices, and a cozy pantry, whereas the other half was still under construction, its concrete floors exposed and its walls unfinished. In that dim, neglected wing, the security guards would routinely switch off the lights, assuming no one would be using the area. About 2 weeks into production, my colleague Sarah, who had always been a bit delicate health-wise, came down with a severe migraine. Concerned for her well-being, I suggested she mention it to our supervisor, Mr. Clark, so she could take a much-needed break. Instead, Mr. Clark calmly instructed her to visit the on-site nurse's office, which was designated for employee care and conveniently located in the unfinished half of the building. The sign above the door, one we'd seen many times near the restroom, assured us that this was indeed where the nurse's office should be. Sarah and I made our way to the nurse's office, but when we arrived, we found the door firmly locked, even though the lights in the corridor were on. Puzzled, we assumed the nurse might have stepped out for a moment, so we decided to check the room for any schedules or notices that might explain her absence. Acting on impulse and a growing sense of concern, I cautiously tried the door handle. To our shock, the door swung open effortlessly, revealing not the well-equipped clinic we had expected, but an empty, stark space. A single small nightlight plugged into an exposed socket offered just enough glow to reveal cold, bare concrete walls and a matching floor. There were no beds, cabinets, or medical supplies. Nothing that resembled a nurse's office. Before we could fully process what we had discovered, a security guard, Mr. Ramos, approached us, his tone laced with suspicion as he asked what we were doing in the unfinished room. We earnestly explained the situation, insisting that the sign had clearly indicated this was the nurse's office. In that moment, an inexplicable chill swept through the room. The temperature seemed to drop suddenly. Our skin prickled and our hair stood on end. A heavy, almost tangible silence filled the space, as if the room itself were holding its breath. The overwhelming atmosphere was too much for Sarah. Tears welled up in her eyes, and soon she broke down into hysterical sobs. Mr. Ramos, now visibly shaken and nervous, quickly shooed us away, locking the door behind us as we were escorted back to our team's workspace. We later recounted the entire episode to Mr. Clark, who sat in stunned silence, clearly at a loss for words as he absorbed our account of that eerie, inexplicable moment. Though the incident was never mentioned again at work, its memory has lingered with me. Even years later, the image of that empty, cold room, the phantom nurse's office that defied every expectation, remains one of the most unsettling experiences of my early career in New Arcadia. Story number 3. I work at a software development firm in Seattle, Washington, a city known for its rainy, overcast nights. It was a grueling deadline week, and I found myself burning the midnight oil almost every night. On one stormy Wednesday evening, as heavy rain pounded the windows and sporadic flashes of lightning illuminated the dark sky, I sat in my corner office trying to focus on my code. I wasn't alone that night. My colleague Kevin was also putting in extra hours to meet a critical project deadline. Around 8:30 p.m., Kevin knocked on my office door. Before leaving, he asked if I was all right and ready to lock up. I assured him I was fine, and with a friendly smile, he headed out. I distinctly heard the front door slam shut behind him, and suddenly, I was the only one left in the building. The office building was designed in an L shape. The main entrance was at one end, and my office was located along the short side, making it a true corner office. As the long hours began to take their toll, I felt my eyelids growing heavy. Needing a quick pick-me-up, I decided to head over to the kitchen for a cup of coffee. While waiting by the coffee maker, a quiet, unexpected sound caught my attention: the soft closing of a door. I leaned toward the hallway, peered out, and called, "Hello?" but received no reply. The sound didn't match that of the heavy front door. It was more like one of the smaller private office doors had been shut. Curious and a little unnerved, I walked back through the corridors, checking every door. Every door was locked tight, including those along the hall where I usually worked. Even in my own section, all the doors were firmly closed, even though I remembered leaving my office door wide open. There was no draft, and every window was securely shut. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was playing a prank on me. Returning to my office, I flung the door open as if expecting a surprise, but the room was exactly as I had left it. My desk, chair, and computer were all in their usual places. The only oddity was that my door had closed on its own, a behavior it had never shown before. I shrugged off the incident and resumed my work, though an unsettling feeling lingered in the back of my mind. As the rain hammered against the windows and lightning illuminated the room roughly once every minute, time passed quickly. Eventually, I decided that it was late enough to call it a night. Satisfied with the progress I'd made, I saved my work and began shutting down my computer. I clicked the shutdown button and the screen went completely dark. That's when I saw it. In the black mirror of my computer screen, I noticed a figure, a woman standing silently behind me. My heart dropped, yet I managed to remain calm. I didn't scream. Instead, I gathered my bag and left the office as quietly as I could, trying desperately not to acknowledge what I had seen. I hurried down the hallway, reached the building's exit, and raced down the stairs into my car. Even as I drove away, drenched by the relentless rain, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. Once I was safely inside my car, I took a deep breath and glanced back at the office window. The light was still on, and I noticed a small bend in the blinds, as if someone was peering in from the other side. Shaken, I immediately called my boss, Claire, to report the bizarre incident. She confirmed that no one else was scheduled to be in the building that night and promised to have security inspect the office. Later, Claire called back with news that the security guard had checked the premises but hadn't found anyone. Curiously, the lone security camera, mounted at the far end of the hallway near the kitchen, had not captured any evidence of a woman roaming the halls. Even though no proof was ever found, that eerie night remains etched in my memory, a chilling reminder of the unexplained presence in an otherwise ordinary office. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.